the one most important non-negotiable superannuation product features that I demand. And this is something you need to know as well if you are interested in saving tens, if not potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars in tax when you go to retire. Let's break down these in-specie transfer services and what they really mean to you. Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Sugar Mama's Fire Play, where we dive deep into all things FIRE, that is financial independence, early retirement, empowering you to take control of your financial future today with smart, intelligent, empowered decisions. I am your host, financial planner Canna Campbell, and today we are exploring a powerful financial strategy and superannuation product feature that could save you thousands of dollars in tax, if not tens or maybe even hundreds of thousands of dollars in tax when you go to retire. And of course, the benefit of that is it helps maximize those retirement savings, or as I prefer to say, those retirement investments. Now, this strategy is called an in-specie transfer service. It is a superannuation product feature that for me is an absolute non-negotiable when it comes to looking at various superannuation accounts. So we're going to break down everything that you need to know and understand about this and decide whether it's applicable or relevant or beneficial to you. Now, as always, all of my content is general in nature and it is never product advice. Please always refer to my general advice warning and, of course, my financial planning license details in the podcast notes. And as always, consult a financial planner when it comes to wanting personal advice that is tailored to your situation and, of course, your superannuation needs and goals. So let's get started. Now, exactly what is an in-specie transfer service? Now, I have been talking about this for about 10 years since I started my YouTube channel, Sugar Mama TV, 10 years ago. And it is still as important today as it was when I first started talking about it. In fact, I'm probably even more passionate about it because I can see the potential savings and uplift this helps people when they know and understand this particular product feature and, I guess, service. So an in-specie transfer allows you to move assets such as shares, ETFs, managed funds from one account to another without actually having to physically sell them. Instead of selling those investments and having to convert them into cash, which obviously triggers then capital gains tax and all those lovely transactional costs like brokerage and buy-sell swaps and obviously time out of the market, you can actually move your assets from one account to another intact. So what this does is it means that you completely leapfrog or avoid legally of triggering capital gains tax and those other fees that I just mentioned. So it basically keeps your investment portfolio, your superannuation portfolio, exactly as it is. Now, why is this so incredibly valuable to your superannuation? Well, when you transition from the accumulation phase, which is the phase that most of us are in right now, which is where you are in the workforce, earning a salary, and your employer is contributing the super guarantee amount into your superannuation investment portfolio every quarter or every month or however you're paid. So when you're accumulating your retirement savings during your normal working life, you then go to pension phase, which is the phase that you enter when you go to retire. And that is when you can finally start drawing an income from that investment portfolio within super that you've been building up over the last, say, 40 years of your working life. Now, most superannuation funds, and I'd say probably about 95% of these, actually require you to sell your assets in accumulation phase just before transferring them into your pension phase. Now, this obviously then triggers capital gains tax and significantly reduces your retirement savings. Now, I'm going to work through an example with you on this, so keep listening. However, if your superannuation fund offers an in-specie transfer service between accumulation phase and their pension phase product, you can actually move your assets directly into that pension account without having to sell them, which means your investments are preserved and allows you obviously to avoid capital gains tax and those other transactional costs, which obviously erode into the portfolio's value. So let's break it down with an example right now so it is crystal clear, because this is so incredibly important. All right, let's say that you've got $1.3 million in superannuation when you go to retire. And the historical cost base of these investments is, say, $400,000, and because you've been taking a long-term buy and hold investment approach, similar to myself. This then means you have $900,000 in capital gains. Normally, when you're moving into pension phase for those 95% superannuation accounts, you sell that entire investment portfolio, that is the 1.3, and even with the 10% capital gains discount for holding them for those assets for over 12 months, you'd still be paying around $90,000 in capital gains tax on that $900,000. So basically just looked at the assessable gain and just applied a basic 10% capital gains tax on that, assuming those assets were held for 12 months. If your assets were held for less than 12 months, that capital gains tax bill could potentially be around about $135,000. But if your superannuation account offers an in-specie transfer service from super to pension, you actually avoid that bill and those transactional costs in its entirety. You get to move that full $1.3 million investment portfolio within your super into pension phase and kickstart your retirement off without having to lose a cent in taxes. Now, my question to you is, if you could legally avoid paying a $90,000 tax bill at one of the most important financial times of your life, that is entering retirement, why wouldn't you? And you can see why I've said tens of thousands of dollars, or if not potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars, because you can see in this very simple example of $1.3 million in super, which is actually very realistic for most of us, especially when you have smart, intelligent financial decisions behind you, that $90,000 to $135,000 in tax savings is huge. Now, why does this matter for pension phase? So another important point for pension phase, which you really need to understand, and this is obviously in today's legislation, is that when you move into pension phase, hopefully with your $1.3 million or more intact, because you haven't had to pay capital gains tax knowing this product feature, the earnings on your investments within pension phase under current legislation are tax-free. That's right, they become tax-free. So you have zero tax on the income and capital gains as long as you stay within the legislated limits. This means that the potential savings are even greater, both from avoiding capital gains tax upfront and from earning a tax-free income in retirement. Imagine your $1.3 million superannuation investment portfolio now generating a tax-free income every year. And if you decide, say, a year or two into retirement, in pension phase, that you decide, yes, you want to go and sell for whatever reason, as long as you're still in pension phase, there is no capital gains tax to pay from that point on. Now, of course, that is under current legislation. So there are double tax savings potentially from understanding today's episode, from understanding the benefit of an in-specie transfer service going from accumulation phase to pension phase, and then understanding the powerful benefits of the tax savings in pension phase. So you can see why this is so incredibly important to know and understand. Taking a pension is powerful, but being able to maximize those assets going into pension phase is equally as important. Now, here is the big tip. You've got to find a superannuation account that supports or offers in-specie transfers from super to pension phase. So, as I mentioned, not all superannuation funds offer in-specie transfer services. I have to say more do today than what they did when I wrote Mindful Money about 6 years ago. And this is one of the many reasons why it is so important that you do your research or consult with a financial planner to find the right superannuation account for you, that actually does offer that in-specie transfer service. Now, I have done a bit of digging around for you and found some more providers that actually offer this in-specie transfer service within super and accumulation to pension phase. However, before I share this link with you, I need you to understand that I am not offering product advice here. These are just tools to help you in your research process, to help you get started. Now, what I'm going to do to make this really easy for you is I'm just going to pop a link in the podcast notes that goes directly to my Instagram account, where you can see the list of, I think, 5 different superannuation providers that offer this. So you can then, from that point, go and do your own research. And of course, read the product disclosure statements and go and speak to a financial planner, as well as give them a call and ask them your questions yourselves, because you may have other questions beyond the in-specie transfer service. Now, I actually had the other day a listener that sent me a DM on Instagram, and they asked if seamless transfers meant the same thing as in-specie transfers. Now, whilst I wasn't exactly sure of the product they were referring to me, this sounds more like a product feature in relation to consolidating your superannuation accounts, not from transferring assets intact from super to pension phase. So I would suspect that this is not the same thing. However, as said, I can't actually see the product that the person was referring to, so always triple check with your superannuation account provider. Now, the other thing you might be thinking, okay, is this is great, this is really helpful, but I don't actually need to worry about this right now. Well, stop right there. I'm here to tell you, you do. So if you're thinking, okay, I'll deal with this later in next year or maybe in the year after, it's definitely not urgent. Okay, let me explain to you why that is not necessarily the case. It is really important that you act on this information sooner rather than later. Because if you do, in fact, need to and decide that you want to switch to a superannuation fund that allows in-specie transfers, you are going to have to sell your assets today and trigger capital gains tax and incur those other transactional costs. But the thing is, the sooner you act, the smaller that capital gains tax is going to be today, because you're going to have less tax to pay. And once you're in the right account, you're generally in the clear. You don't need to move the money again. You're set up for life, hopefully. So what I'm trying to say is it's short-term pain for long-term gain. By making these changes, if you need to now, the triggering of capital gains tax will potentially be a lot smaller than if you were to go and do this in 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years' time, obviously subject to market movements. So that is why I have stuck with the same superannuation account since I was 24. And yes, where I have my superannuation is listed in that link that I'm going to provide you in the podcast notes. And I have zero intention of ever changing superannuation accounts unless there's an in-specie transfer service available, because I most definitely do not want to trigger any capital gains tax of my investment assets within my superannuation account today or when I go to retire. So this is why it is so important to get on top of this now and set this up now, because it really does reduce the costs to you further down the track. All right, so let's quickly do a recap of these key benefits of an in-specie transfer service. So number 1 is avoiding capital gains tax when moving your superannuation assets, that is investment assets, from accumulation phase to pension phase. Number 2, preserving your superannuation investment portfolio without those selling and repurchasing expenses. Number 3 is maximizing the tax-free earnings in pension phase, because you have more money going into pension phase than you would if you'd had to pay capital gains tax. And of course, having a larger amount of money in pension phase, especially as you go into pension phase, is going to help mean that your money is going to last a lot longer and work harder for you with those additional tax savings in force. So, as you can now see, hear, and understand why I have been so incredibly vocal about this particular superannuation strategy and superannuation product feature. And for some unknown reason, there is very little information out there. However, from doing my own research and speaking to superannuation account providers as to why they don't offer this, is because there is a huge expense to these superannuation companies, apparently, to actually add this product feature in now. However, the benefit to you by listening to today's episode is that you now know and that you can start your own research process into working out whether this is important to you, whether the tax savings are valuable enough to look at the option of moving superannuation accounts, and that you will enter retirement with absolutely no regrets and feel proud about the decisions you made back 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago that are benefiting you and the financial harmony that you have in your life as you enter retirement. Now, that is it for today's episode. It is a short but sweet one. And I really hope that you have a much better understanding of what an in-specie transfer service is and why this could be invaluable as you prepare for your own retirement. And if you found today's episode helpful, please make sure that you share this episode with anyone that is serious about maximizing their super, planning for retirement, and enjoying a long and luxurious one where their money is working efficiently and effectively. And as always, please make sure that you stay tuned for more financially empowering tips, insights, and strategies. Thank you so much for listening. Please, and in the meantime, keep that financial fire burning bright within. This is Sugar Mama's Fire.